3, 2, 1. We are live.
Live. We are on air. Something like that.
At last. Yeah, on air.
So,
Yep.
who are we?
Venator.
Chronicles Podcast.
That's right.
All right. So, where do we begin?
Well, I think just leave off kind of where we started. Honestly, we were just chatting a little bit before this even started going, and we're like, we should be recording this.
We should, yeah, because we missed out a lot of conversation that we could have recorded
and just been like, throw it in there.
Yeah, maybe it's a good thing we didn't.
Yeah, who knows? We'll find out shortly, won't we?
Yeah. So Venator Chronicles. So first off, Venator. Why did we choose Venator? Mainly because I thought it was cool. As we're trying to figure out a sweet podcast name, I found a few, and I liked Jaeger Chronicles Podcast because Jaeger is, the German word for hunter.
And now we're all alcoholics.
Yeah.
It's going to be like an AA podcast. Yeah. That'll turn into real fast.
Yeah. So I kind of figured after a few people mentioned that maybe Venator was probably a better choice.
Yeah, and where does that come from?
So Venator is actually Latin for hunter. Just kind of looking at different words. I kind of like that one. It was unique.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think it was too crazy.
Yep.
I'm not gonna lie. I kind of stole it from Rocky Boots because they have their Venator camo line, and so that's where I learned the word from. So Rocky Boots.
That works though.
It's a Latin word. So
yeah. Well, I don't think anybody owns a word as far as that goes. So.
But if Rocky Boots does want to promote us or sponsor us, we'll take it.
Episode 1, come on in. We'll take anybody. I'm sure that they would be thrilled to be on board here.
So.
Well, that's pretty awesome, and I think for me, like when you initially floated it my way, and you know what they say about new ideas, the first thing is rejection. And so I was like, I don't know, let me look at, and you're like, okay, Latin, it's hunter. And I was like, you know what? The further back we can get the word hunter from, the better, because the more and more hunting I do, the more and more connected I feel with nature and God and everything around me, where it's like, this is like a part of me. This is where part of me is supposed to be.
Yo.
So I was like, yep, this is good. We'll use it. This is awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah, I had a few people that I threw the name past, and that one seemed to stick out. So here we are. We're stuck with it now. I already paid the $20 for the logo, so we're not changing anytime soon.
Oh, I think it'll work out.
For better or for worse.
Yeah. So I think it'd be a good place to start. Honestly, we got a lot of new people, hopefully. That are going to be tuning in. They don't know anything about us. They don't know really even why we're starting this podcast, right? Because there's an infinite amount of podcasts that you can be listening to right now.
Yeah, there's a ton.
So what for you? I got some of my own reasons, but what for you is kind of caused you to be like, hey, you know what? This is something interesting. This is something I'd like to do.
Yeah. I mean, really, why create another podcast in the age of podcast? So I've been kind of actually wanting to do a podcast. There we go. Don't touch them. Don't touch the wires. Just start messing things up. I've been wanting to do a podcast for a while. Wasn't quite sure, exactly what it was going to be on, who it was going to be with, because I knew I didn't want to do one by myself. And then as we started really connecting this last fall over hunting, kind of hit me. I'm like, man, I think we need to do a podcast. And in looking, because I listen to a bunch of various hunting podcasts as it is. I know you do. Yeah.
What's your quick variety of what you listen to?
Probably the big ones, Gritty.
Okay.
Gritty Bowman, Kafaru Cast, the Hunting Public. Probably the big ones that are on Knock On. I mean, that's not just hunting, but I mean, those were the ones that really.
And just in a little bit of contrast, just on that exact point, is basically for me, it's like Meat Eater. We got like Ben O'Brien, and so it's like, and even like Gritty, it's like I didn't listen to that quite as much, but to have that little bit of diversity, just even going in that area, I think is a good place to come from.
Yeah, and so looking, I mean, obviously there's a lot more podcasts out there in relation to hunting and all various forms of hunting. So why create another one? But one of the things that I noticed was it seems to be all these podcasts come at it from more of an expertise. sort of platform. Like, and a lot of them, I mean, rightfully so. I mean, these guys have a lot of experience. You and I, we don't have that.
Yeah.
So I thought it would be a fun project for us, as well as to be able to share with others our experience here in what we're learning about hunting and how to hunt and everything that goes with that. This massive learning curve that we're taking on, and just to be able to share that with people and get feedback.
Yeah.
You know, I think so that was kind of what I saw. I thought, hey, why not? There doesn't seem to be this kind of podcast. So
Yeah.
and we like talking about hunting, so why not put our talks
Absolutely.
to good use?
Yeah. And for me, a big part of it was is early on in archery. It was like I would come back from any hunt, right? And any time I go out, and I have friends who will be like, "No way, you didn't learn something." Every time I go out, I say I learned something, and they're like, "What would you learn?" You know, and it's like it's nice to have this place where you're bouncing off things that you thought about and you learned, and have that repetition in your mind.
Yeah.
And I just recall, like, I had a time where I had finally seen some deer closer than I've ever seen deer, because I've rifle hunted up to this year. We'll get into that later. And then, you know, there's times where I'd missed deer and I haven't ever experienced that. Right. And so I'm calling like 3-4 people on the way home, like just begging for this community, which I had felt a little bit more in the rifle season, but that's only 9 days.
Yeah.
And so I'm calling all these people trying to get connected in that area and being like, what do you think about this, this, and this? And then finally, like, you and I started getting together more in the evenings and just hanging out, talking through some of those experiences and what this has meant to us. And one thing to me was that was really cool that kind of both of us brought to the table was like your level on the technical side of archery.
The
is
little
like,
bit that I have.
Yeah. Okay. But you gotta imagine. I picked up a bow for the first time. I mean, outside of being like a little kid.
It was so recent.
I picked up a bow probably mid-August for the very first time, a compound bow. Outside of like as a child, shooting it up into the air and seeing how close I could get to it when it hit the ground, which was not advised. And so for me to have someone who at least had been in that field a little bit, you know, it's still relatively new, but you're able to explain the things to me in a way I can understand, and then give me some areas like, hey, these are high points, and then also like the tactic side of it.
Yeah.
You know, I have really good. I have a really good source as far as my brother, who at some point will be kind of on as a guest. Hopefully,
we'll get him on.
We'll get him on. He's a consistent hunter.
He knows a little more.
He knows
than
a
us.
little bit. And then, you know, there's a few other, you know, you mentioned the hunting public, which is for me a huge, like, I follow them like hardcore. I love it.
So why don't we go into your kind of who you are, and then kind of your history of hunting and what got you to where you're at today.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then let's.
First of all, we haven't even given our names. Yeah,
we gotta give names.
We are lame. This is so episode 1 type material.
This is episode 1 of us, isn't it?
So you are.
I am Ethan Taylor.
And I am Dustin Jelly, pronounced like peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah, not spelled like jelly though.
No, not at all.
Yeah, you'll be confused if you try to find him on social media.
Yeah.
So Dustin Jelly. Why don't you start?
Man,
how'd you get here?
Oh man, turning the question around on me.
I did.
I see what you did there.
Yes, very
so
smooth.
Man, well, let's see. So obviously, I haven't been hunting very long before I get in that. So obviously, see, who am I? I am 30 years old, and I have been, hunting for the last 3 years. I actually didn't grow up hunting at all. I went out a couple times in my teens with a friend. I sat in a tree, froze my butt off with a smoothbore shotgun, hoping a deer would walk through.
And you weren't hooked?
I was not hooked. Yeah.
Weird.
You know, hunting in 20 below weather, not seeing anything. Yeah, it was absolutely
Shocker.
miserable. And my dad didn't hunt. Nobody in my family did. So I didn't. Even though I had a couple of my close friends, John and Steve, for years bugged me to get into hunting. They're like, dude, you need to get into this, especially bow hunting. They were harping on that for years. But I never did, never really had interest. I was always busy doing other things. I always liked the idea of someday getting into hunting. And then it was about probably 4 years now. One of my coworkers, Mr. Kenny Schofield, and I were talking, and we were talking about hunting. He's a big hunter, and he asked if I knew who this guy Cam Haynes was, and I was like, nope, never heard of him.
Never heard of her.
Never heard of her. And he's like, dude, you got to check this guy out. Like, and this guy, I mean, he lifts and he runs and he's hunting. Like, you'd like it.
Hardcore.
Yeah. And so he showed me a video, and I was like blown away at, here's this guy, because it's so contrasted what I had envisioned hunting and hunters to be. Because, I mean, we're here in, well, I'm in Minnesota, you're in Wisconsin.
Barely.
We're in the Midwest. Midwest hunting to me was sitting in a tree stand a few hours a day and then drinking beer and then go sit in a tree stand for a few more hours. And it was the farthest thing from fun.
Right.
And here all of a sudden I saw a video of this guy, Cam Haynes, not only like lifting and he's super jacked, but he's out doing this kind of hunting that was, I was like, whoa. Well,
even if I'm going to interject in the middle of your story here, even besides fun, it wasn't work. And you've heard people talk about it 1,000 times, like the difference between like
that really quick, easy fun where it's like, oh, I went on a roller coaster. It's not something you remember, something you come back to and revisit in your mind, where opposed to like in the moment, it's hard work and you hate every second of it. And you look back on it and you're like, that was probably one of the most fun things I've ever done.
Yeah.
And so to see Cameron Haynes even do it in that way, you were like, oh, there's something more here.
Yeah, there is something more, especially seeing him out chasing, like climbing through a mountain, chasing elk. I was like, whoa.
Yeah,
that's the kind of hunting I could see myself getting into.
Yes.
Because I hate sitting still.
Yes.
Still do. That's why I don't fish. And so, I don't know, something from there, it just kind of clicked. And my buddy Kenny was a bow hunter. And I don't know what it was, but it clicked. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to give this a try. And so went out and bought a bow 4 years ago. And instantly fell in love with archery.
Archery by its as a standalone.
Just archery by its standalone. Oh yeah, like there was just like it. I mean, I'd shot rifles for a long time. Pretty good shot with the rifle, and really could do a lot with that. And there's something infuriating about trying to shoot a bow for how hard, how difficult it was, and I loved it. I mean, I still can't do what I wish I could do with a bow 4 years later, but I love the challenge and the nuanced details of setting up a bow and building arrows and dialing in everything. And so I got hooked, and I've spent the last 3 hunting seasons straight bow hunting. Like I had never shot a deer. In fact, it took me 3 years to shoot my first deer.
This being the third?
Yeah, year 3 this last
2018
year.
rather.
Yeah, 2018 was year 3. Finally got my first deer, but I was set. Like my first deer was ever taken was going to be with a bow, and that's what I did. I just bow hunted the last 3 years, and even during rifle season, I'm going out with a bow.
Yeah,
and so. Yeah, I've been doing it the last few years, and then this last year you started, and then you and I connected, and it was just like, oh man, here's somebody who gets it to the degree that I do, even though I don't know as much as I wish I knew. Like I just there's something like just chasing being really good at this craft that I want to get after, and most of my friends out shooting bows aren't doing that. Like they were pretty satisfied with being able to take the bow out a week or two before hunting season, nailing a few arrows into target plate at 20 yards and calling it good. And it's like, no, I want to get into like the nuanced details and just
we can go deep.
Oh yeah.
We can go deep into that.
And so you and I connecting on this level and just geeking out over the little things and was pretty awesome. Finding somebody else who appreciated those fine details and everything that kind of learned, and being able to share the lessons that I was learning and bounce ideas off or thoughts. So that was pretty sweet.
Yeah. And I think if I can touch on real quick before I get started on my story, unless you had something else you wanted to add to that. I think that's kind of the point of this podcast is honestly, we don't want this just to be people tuning in to listen to a couple of guys talk about their experiences and what they are learning or even looking back and be like, oh, why were we doing that?
Yeah.
Kind of the idea of this is really to create a community where you can we want people's input.
Yeah.
Right. And not just in the sense of like, oh, correct this error you said. But actually like, hey, try something like this.
We'll say a lot of things that need to be corrected.
Oh man, yeah. I imagine.
We apologize to our wives ahead of time.
Oh my goodness, that is very well said and timely. And so we really want it to be something where we're bouncing ideas off of a community and a group of people that have some of those same interests.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'll start with myself now.
All right.
I'm 27. Like I said, name's Ethan Taylor. I guess to start out my hunting background, I'll first mention my dad. My dad, he's 67, 68. You never know. He's up there now, but he was so into hunting and trapping. He actually quit like high school sports to get into it. I come from a family of 9 boys and 1 girl. And so it's been
that poor girl.
Yeah, no, she
or
was
that poor girl's boyfriends.
Dude, she's tough. She had man, I don't know if she had more than 1 boyfriend. She's married now.
Oh, that's good.
And he is. I mean, we kind of grew up with the family of who she married, so it worked out pretty well because we were friends with him.
Well, that helps.
Yeah, stamp of approval. So I kind of jumped there a little bit, but just to give you an idea of like my dad's priorities was like, I'm going to hunt and I'm going to fish. Nice. He'd wake up at like 3, 4 in the morning before school to go check his trap lines. And then hunting obviously was a big part of that. And then when he started having a family, priorities changed. He started like, kind of pushing that to the side, obviously, as more and more kids come along. And so, but the underlying there is as we come to age and stuff, I mean, we'd be probably 5, 6, and he would start us out even conibear trapping for like whitetail rabbits out in the woods. And, you put the little carrot on there and it was like, we'd wake up on our own, at this time we might've been 6 or 7 or 8. And we'd go out and we'd check these traps. It'd be freezing cold. They had pictures out by our old garage. And then we'd take these rabbits back and we would skin them and we'd tan the hide, just throwing salt on it. And I mean, they were just junk, but we kept them, and then eat the rabbits. And so there was always this, and we lived out in the country. And so there's always this desire to be outdoors and to be interacting with nature. And I guess the one thing that's drastically different from right now is we did rifle hunting. And so he did a little archery hunting, but that was not something that was easy to get kids involved with quickly and easily and get them attuned to that. And so we all went through hunter safety basically at the earliest possible age, which I honestly forget now. I think it's like 12, maybe 12 or 13.
Yeah, I remember going through that.
Yeah. And so, so I went through hunter safety, did the rifle thing, and, immediately there was that community. It was like family came up. It was this compact 9-day season, in hindsight, compact 9-day season. Yeah. And that was the time you had with your family. And in Wisconsin, at least in the part of Wisconsin we're in, you can bait. And so you throw corn out there and you sit over a bait pile. And then you go out. So different than Minnesota. Oh, yeah. Well, even that's
you don't bait
hugely
in Minnesota.
Different, right? And so it was sit over corn pile till about 9 or 10. 10 if you're sitting a real long day
in the morning.
Yeah. It was brutal. It's really not bad.
Especially as a 14-year-old, you're just dying.
Yeah, just
you're sitting there for hours.
But really, the hunts you live for were the deer drives.
Yeah.
Which are its own topic. But just to put it shortly, like that was the part where you're like interacting with people, you're communicating and you're coordinating and you're actually making a plan. I would actually argue you're making more of a plan doing deer drives than what we were doing, just putting bait out there, see there's tracks and the bait's gone. Oh, deer here.
Yeah.
Right. That's about as surface level as it got. And so anyway, I had hunted, rifle hunted for a few years there. I took off. I quit hunting in high school a little bit when we had sports going on basically constantly.
lost prioritization there. Left for Alaska for a summer. Didn't do anything hunting wise up there. Just kind of work for the summer and get some experience in life. And then
How much do you regret that now?
what's that? Not hunting.
Yeah,
in
not hunting in
man,
Alaska.
dude. We did get to go fishing.
Okay.
So we caught some ridiculous rainbow trout. It was unreal.
Nice.
Yeah, it was pretty cool there. And I got to go to, side note, got to go to Ketchikan, Alaska, which is the salmon capital of the world, and saw them run, which was unbelievable. I mean, it was just so thick. But anyway, came back after Alaska, still wasn't really focused on hunting. I had gotten in a motorcycle accident, and life kind of started changing because I had just kind of lost my way a bit, I'd say.
Yeah.
And life kind of changed. It started changing some priorities, and I met what would be my future wife while I was at work when we both worked at the same place together. And so kind of lost some of the old friends in a way, or acquaintances maybe, and then found out who the real ones were that you're really sticking around, like through the changes kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so after I kind of lost all these just really surface level hobbies and stuff, it was like, man, I want to get back outdoors. Like that's where I started finding myself like naturally, like just like, man, that's where I want to be. And so I started rifle hunting again. I would say it still was like a surface level. I was under like my thing was I'd do a little scouting, but my thing was like, if I work hard enough, if I do all day sits, then I'm going to get deer. Did not work out that way. Okay. So it didn't work out that way. Went some years without getting deer. Tried to get my brother-in-law involved, and I don't blame him because I didn't have really the right approach.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, why would I want to do this another year? And it's like, yep, fair enough. So I would say basically I had just been rifle hunting for a couple of years again, and then my brother Seth, actually just this year, he's been a big archery hunter. But just this year, he's like, hey, I'm basically upgrading my bow. It was a Bowtech Tomcat. It's about 10 years old. He's like, do you want to use this? He's like, it's got a lot of kills left in it. He's like, it's taking down some big boys, and it's got a lot of kills left in it.
And how long had he been bow hunting?
Oh, before he got that bow. So over 10 years.
So he's been going at it a while.
Yeah, he's been real serious about it for quite a while. And so I was like, all right, he came up and showed me the bow. He was like, this, he's like, it'll be enough to get you started at least. And I was like, I'm really interested. I want this, longer season and be a little bit more involved with it.
Yeah.
Little did I know what that might all entail. And so I got this bow, and this was in mid-August. Started shooting it at the archery range. And it was like you said, it was like, yep, I'm going to be doing this probably the rest of my life, or as long as I can pull back a string.
I remember getting a couple texts about, hey man, I got a bow. Anything I need to know? And went from a couple texts to a lot of texts about bow and archery and bow hunting.
Very quickly. And I'll do a shameless plug here. Identical Draw. So after I got this bow, and I was like, I want to hunt. This bow didn't even have the right draw length.
Yeah, it was way too long for you.
They quit making the modules. And so they quit making the modules for this bow that would allow the correct draw length. And, I got my brother's arrows. I don't know anything about arrows at this point. Still barely do. Thank you, Dustin, for filling in the blanks there. And so I had this bow, and I was like, you know what? Like, I want to invest because I already know I'm going to be doing this. And so, by the way, side note again, Dustin and I are both huge gun fans.
Oh, yeah.
And so for me to sell a gun and not replace it with another gun is a huge deal. Like, my wife was confused. And I was like, it's fair to be confused because I told her long ago I once sold a gun and did not replace that gun with a different gun.
Did she believe you?
And she was like, well, you told me that if you ever sell a gun, you are going to replace it with another gun and just fix what you want, kind of get what you want.
Yeah.
And this is just going to be kind of rotating weapons going through. Well, I told, and so it took quite a bit of conversation before I was like, I know I'm going to do this for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Like, it was that serious to me.
That was the same thing that happened to me when I started really getting into it. I was like, you know what? I want a bow. I think my wife needs a bow too, because we could do this together. Because that's one of the things where I was trying to find is stuff that we can do together. Mm-hmm. And it was like, well, how can I buy a bow? I'll have to sell a gun. And that was such a weird thought at first. Like, I'm selling a gun to buy a bow.
But it felt like an easy decision, which was the weirdest part. Which is why I'm glad my wife kind of like checked me. She was like, "Are you sure about this?" And I was like, "I don't know, am I?" And so anyways, I reached out to a few people even on Instagram where I was like, "Hey, look, I got this bow. They don't even make modules for it anymore." I'm like, "Is there any tips or tricks that I can figure out?" Because I was all over the place as far as, my consistency. And one of those people, I don't know if you follow the page at all, Identical Draw. He's like, "Oh, hey, I got this bow. That's a 2018 is their flagship bow." And they're like, "I got this bow and we're getting rid of it. I'm selling it and I'm getting the 2019. He's like, "Would you be interested?" He offered me beyond fair price on it. And I was like, "Yep."
Yeah, because remember you texting me about that. You're like, "Should I do this?" I was like, "Yeah, you should." Like,
Yep,
that's such a cheap price. Like, if you don't do that.
Oh, it was unreal. It was like just a huge blessing because I was like, the entry level to get into archery is so high. At least when I have 3 kids.
Yeah.
And so 3 kids and a very important wife. It's like what I don't know at what point I would have ever been able to buy a bow and arrows and like that kind of investment. And if I didn't ever get that taste from my brother, even just giving him that bow, and I was like, "Hey, Seth, do you want your bow back? Do you want all this? Memories and all those things invested in that." He's like, "Yeah, absolutely. That'd be great. I can give it to the next person." And I was like, "Sorry that I, just use this for a little bit and replaced it and all that." He's like, "It did its job. You're hooked. Yeah, you're hooked. You're in. And now you're going to be able to experience some of those things and you upgraded your equipment a little bit, quite a bit. And, and now you're going to be able to enjoy it." And it was like, this is going to be a lifelong thing. And then, like you were mentioning earlier, is like we started to connect and talk about this and text back and forth a little bit because I saw your posts and you were pretty high up on the technical stuff for me and the savvy. Like I didn't know what FOC was as of like a month and a half ago, maybe.
Yeah. Maybe.
Which is front of center. So I'm not going to pretend like anybody else here knows what it is. Like a big part of this podcast is that we're relatively new at this and we want people to be able to come and just kind of join us alongside us and be like, hey, I don't know that much either. Or maybe they do and they can offer something to us that'll really
we have
help.
A lot to learn.
We do.
So, and I think that was from my perspective when seeing you get into it was so much fun because it allowed me to take everything I had learned over the last 3 years and all the mistakes I made, at least on the archery side and the shooting and the technical aspects.
Right.
Because I spent so much time reading and studying and watching videos that I was like, okay, sweet. Like, here's a chance to save Ethan
so much heartache
of issues that I had to figure out by myself over the last 3 years.
Yes.
So I was really glad to be able to at least share
Yep.
the one step further that I was in that aspect with you.
Yeah. And my brother, and this is, and definitely no diss towards my brother. I mean, if you see his wall of deer and his dedication, and really just his whole family, their level of dedication and commitment to hunting and being able to share that with each other, you definitely wouldn't take it as a diss. But the technical side of it in terms of, how much of a deal it is that FOC, like, I don't think that matters a whole bunch. And honestly, if you get within 20 yards of something, it may not matter as much.
Yeah, I probably put a little too much emphasis in the stuff that doesn't ultimately matter in comparison to execution and ability of getting inside a shooting range of a deer.
Well, and I think that's I guess that's kind of to the point is having that balance where we got, you have people in your ear about and the things you're interested in and you're inclined to, which is maybe more to that technical side of archery in general. And then me, I'm more like, hey, what's the tactics of this thing, right?
Yeah, because I think if we were to break it down on who Ethan is, who Dusty is, Ethan, you tend to be a lot more versed in the tactics and the actual hunting aspect.
Yep.
Whereas I've spent more time this last few years really diving into the technical side of the archery aspect and getting to learn and know about equipment and arrows and bows and realize and learn how much I actually don't know. Like, And so it's been a fun balance over the last, I don't know, 5 months or so of us talking about all this and bringing both these aspects together and helping each other.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, the thing that is like the cherry on top, which I would never expect going into a season. I mean, it's two things. It's like your mentality is like you have to go into every hunt with the sense of confidence of like, I'm going to execute the hunt. I'm going to be aware. I'm going to be connected to what's going on around me. But at the same time, not going into the year being like, oh, it's automatic. I got a deer, right? Like, oh, I'm definitely getting a deer this year. And it's like for me, for it to be my first year, that part of it was like, you want to go into each hunt with the expectation again, but you don't want to be like cocky about it, where you're not really having respect for the game, if that makes sense, where you're not really coming into it. And so for us, like the cherry on top is that we ended up both being successful this year, and
finally
so many lessons. Even this year I had an unbelievable amount of failures, like the most of failures I've experienced while hunting, if that's
and I think that's something that we're going to look at, I think, dedicating a whole episode to is what we've learned this last year,
right?
And the ups and the downs and the heartbreaks and the ugly aspects,
right,
of all that.
So
one of the things that, as you're talking just kind of about you growing up, I kept hearing the sense of community. Like that just seems to really be something that you really value. And that's something that I can totally relate with over the last few years was really developing the sense of community and camaraderie with the other guys I got to hunt with. I mean, like I said earlier, my friends John and Steve growing up for years trying to get me into hunting, bow hunting, and then finally getting into it. Being able to join them over the last few years, we'll go up every September up to Lake of the Woods area and go hunting. And I look forward to that time. Almost more so just because I get to hang out with these guys. Like these guys that I really like hanging out with, spending time. We get to hang around a fire and eat some good food. There's just that sense of community. That
camaraderie. I think you said it best too, with camaraderie.
Yeah.
It's a huge part of it.
You know, and just how much our friendship has really grown over the last 5 months because of hunting. Like we've known each other now for...
Since Fond du Lac.
Yeah, so it would have been like 7 years. Yeah, 7 years already. And I mean, we've could have easily bonded over lifting, over fighting. But it's been hunting that has brought us together even more.
Well, and that was one thing I thought that was really profound, is that the one thing I guess I didn't expect was to feel such, like I didn't understand how much of a big deal that was for me. Like I didn't understand that like that was high up on my priority list as far as when it comes to hunting. I don't know if it's like, am I not, I don't know, because there's people who go solo, right? And they're solo, and maybe just they have their own community and it's a little bit tighter knit, and so it doesn't appear that they're connected and they have this community around them. But for me, it was like as soon as I started going out, it's like, what's the point of this if I can't share it with somebody?
Oh yeah.
And what's the point is if I'm not able to like bounce it off somebody and learn something more than what my feeble mind, you know what I mean, in this area can grasp. And so for me, it was like, as soon as I'd find myself, as soon as I was done with these hunts, it was like, who can I call? Who can I call? Who can I talk to? I want to walk through this thing, and who's going to be excited with me? You know what I mean? And not like there's people I could call where it's like, oh, you didn't get a deer? Okay, the end. Like, we can hang up now. Like, why did you call? And then there's people I can call you. I got a couple other buddies and my brother where it's like I could call and be like, hey, I didn't get a deer. And they're like, so what happened? And it was like, and then you got like, you're both excited about this hunt regardless of the outcome.
Or those dreaded phone calls or texts. I missed.
Dude, there was too many.
I think we've had a few of those this last year.
Yeah, it was like you said, we'll be dedicating a whole podcast to that because it's worthwhile going over how you deal with that and just the impact and like you said, even just having to text somebody because you can't. It's not something you want to hang in your own mind and start getting in your own head too much about. So that's definitely something that we'll be talking about in the near future. But I guess again, like the idea of this podcast is really, I mean, it comes back to, for me, I guess, the biggest part of it is community and having people you're connected with, people to share those successes and especially those failures with.
Because those are a lot more.
Yeah.
I mean, I have so many more failures than I do success.
Yeah.
At least right now.
Well, and the thing is if we're going to get into this, like, I have like a little bit of a bone to pick. The thing is that it's like, I know, like, even on my Instagram, like, I go coyote hunting, as you know, like, semi-regularly. And it's like, I will wake up at 1 or 2 in the morning and before work and try to get out a couple sets before I go to work. And it's like, and I'll post it on my Instagram story that I'm going out and this is what I'm doing. And it's like, every single time has been a failure from the outside perspective.
Yeah.
Right? And people will be like, why are you posting it? This is stupid. A waste of my time. Like, they're just like, what's the point? And it's literally caused me to be like, oh, should I just, take a bunch of stuff as if I was going to put on the story, and then if I'm successful, then post something?
Yeah.
It's like, no. The reality is when you're hunting, and most of the time you're going to fail.
Yo.
And if you're not okay with that, and if you're not okay with like sharing that, it's like, if I can't share that, I shouldn't be on a podcast because I want to be honest.
And I think it both grinds us in this day of age and the age of Instagram and Facebook, that you have to post and present yourself in such a way that you're always successful. Like life's always good. Hunting's always good. Like I'm always successful.
Everything's filtered.
Yeah. And it's not. And I think that's one thing that we just want to both bring to this podcast and just the community, hopefully, that we can help build is just how do we also learn to deal with, quite honestly, the failure aspect that we deal with most of the time. Like
most of the time, absolutely.
And just to be able to be honest, that, I mean, we'll get into that because I think that'll be most of our episode 2 podcast is what we learned in 2018,
right,
in midst of all those failures.
Yeah, and this is the thing for me, and I think the world around us and like you said, like everything is just filtered.
It's so fake.
And the thing is for me is like we say failures, and it almost makes me cringe because I know for me, like if it was a failure, I wouldn't spend the time away from my family. Yeah, I wouldn't. Like if I wasn't learning something, if I didn't feel like I was actually challenging myself and like bettering myself or trying to like take myself to the next level in some sense, why would I spend the majority of my time away from my family hunting? When I am away, a big part of it has to do with hunting. Why would I spend that doing something that I know I'm going to fail at most of the time? If I'm going by what the world calls failure. And it's like, that is not worth my time if in fact it is a failure. But we say that, and I think it's fine to generalize it, but like the main, like for me, when we're talking about the failures, it's like from the outside perspective, because for us it's like every single time there's something to be learned. The ultimate goal may not have been reached. But you can spend hours and hours talking about all the things you learned and all the things that you would do differently, whatever that looks like. And that's exciting. That's something worth spending your time doing. Any craft that you start or anything that you start where it's...
Oh, you're going to suck at it.
Well, yeah, that. And then also like anything that you can perfect in a short amount of time or even in a long amount of time, anything that you can perfect is probably not worth your while. If you're really trying to grow and really trying to challenge yourself. And so to me, it's like, I want it to be more failures than quote unquote successes. Because then I'm going to have the most opportunity to grow in that. And so that's a really big deal.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've kind of learned that mindset in doing jiu-jitsu over the last 10 years. Is I've learned far more of my failures, especially in competition.
Well, you've put yourself in place to fail. If that's fair to say. Would you say it's fair to say?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And I've learned so much more in those failures than I have in my success. I mean, obviously, especially in the world of hunting, people like to talk about, it's the experience. And while that totally is part of why we do it, is that experience. I mean, let's be real. Part of it's a very outcome-based thing that we're trying to do. We want to harvest. We want to kill an animal.
Yes.
I mean, I remember feeling it this year going out hunting, and my kids were like, are you gonna actually get a deer? Like
Right.
when my kids start questioning, are you gonna actually get a
twist
deer?
the knife.
So it was really good this year to actually finally harvest a deer, because
Yes.
then my kids actually believe that I am a real hunter.
And that you're actually out hunting even?
Yeah,
I mean,
that I'm out
honestly, at that
hunting.
point, you know,
Yeah, I mean, year 3, my wife's starting to question, like, is this
I
really
can't
worth
imagine.
your time?
I don't know what would have happened if I got to year 3 and I had not killed anything.
Yeah.
Although, honestly, for rifle hunting, I'm not sure that I even had that much success. I mean, it was just not 2018, but 2017. I got my first buck ever. It was so my brother Luke called it a 5-pointer. I call it like a glorified 3-pointer. So I mean, honestly, for me, it's like my family has known nothing but failure up until 2017, and I'll be married for 6 years in May.
And I think we have a lot to talk about that.
Yes.
In an upcoming episode.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, that was quite a rabbit trail.
Yeah,
For
just
the
had
5 people probably going to listen to this podcast, with 2 of those being
upwards of 2 to 5 people.
with
Yeah.
at least 2, because we know our wives are going to
Yes,
listen to this.
that's true.
Just to make fun of us.
Yep, and you know what? They
So we're calling it
it's
out
fair
right
game.
now.
It's
Yes.
fair game.
So
It's fair game. We're putting ourselves
man,
out there
how
for
long,
that.
How long have we been going?
We've been going for 41 minutes
Oh,
and
man.
7 seconds here.
That
So
was probably like 40 minutes longer than people really wanted.
yeah, well, you got to start somewhere.
But I figured, hey, if you're listening to this 41 minutes in, you know,
Yeah. Well, the thing is anybody that wants to hear and is able to hang around, it's only gonna.
We hope that the quality, both in content and also I mean even sound quality for us,
Yeah.
because we are total
totally noobs.
I mean we have borrowed equipment.
We had to
Some borrowed
YouTube
equipment.
how to get the stuff running tonight.
That's true. This is true.
and we're actually in my office where I work right
We
now,
are in your
doing
office.
this, and so you might hear some
Yes.
reverb off the walls.
But we knew that it's something we would really like to do. We like to hang out and talk, and it's like, well, why don't we just put it out there?
Exactly.
Because it to us, we found there's some community there, and it's like, why wouldn't we want to just put that out there? And if anybody wants to join us, that's
No.
awesome. Even
And
if like 1 or 2 people.
And I
Honestly.
think like my hopes is that we can share our experiences being so new to all of this, both the archery to bow hunting,
The strategy.
strategy. I mean, in all reality, really learn how to hunt. Like,
Yeah.
not just sit in a tree stand in hopes that a deer will walk by. Because I mean, I spent the first 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and in all reality, the first however many years of my perceived view on hunting, at least deer hunting, as that like you sit in a tree stand hoping a deer will walk
Yeah,
by.
sit on the tree line where
Yep.
the food is.
Yep.
I mean, again, we'll get into this later about
Yep.
some
and
different
then
ideas of
hope
this.
that a
And
deer
then
walks
just,
by.
Please walk by.
Yeah.
I know your food's here.
And-
Where are you?
And so I hope our goal is to be able to share being so new to this and so close to the start that we can share these experiences that we're learning for others to learn from.
Yep.
Because I feel like sometimes when you become so versed in your craft and your ability and you're sharing that and where you're at. I mean, I see this in the world of lifting. Like, there's a lot of high level power lifters I follow, and what these guys are doing. A lot of people look at it and go, "Oh man, what does that guy do for a workout? I need to do that if I want to deadlift,
Right.
1,000 pounds." Well, he didn't get there doing that. You know,
Right,
he
right.
got there doing this, but we tend to forget
And it
that.
evolves. Yeah.
Yeah,
You forget
and-
how it evolves.
Yeah, and so hopefully with us being so new to this, that we can share stuff that we're learning and to learn from others who maybe are one step ahead of us, and share that.
Well,
And-
and you know what's really interesting is I'm highly
Involved with the hiring process at my work, and one thing we talk about with like all of our stuff is like we want to encourage these new people. So if someone even comes in where it's like, hey, this is going to be my first year, a lot of times we can forget really quickly some of the basic questions or some of the basic things, like looking at it and going, oh, we forgot to question that part of it. And it's like,
Yeah.
even they bring something so valuable,
Yep.
so valuable. And it's like, you don't just want to put people down or be like, hey, you're going to learn from me because I've just been in it for X amount of years. But in reality, it's like each individual person has a unique aspect and a unique look, look towards what their experience is, and just they analyze things differently.
Yeah.
And so being open to like both those people who are professionals, because obviously, and those people who are really high level, they got a lot of years and they've obviously been very successful, and take all the lessons you can there. But being able to look down at the very start of it, which, like you mentioned, is kind of where we're at.
Yeah.
And being able to take those valuable lessons as well, and just kind of like start to build this thing instead of it being like, hey, here we've quote unquote arrived, or we're at least towards 3/4 of the way up. I don't think any honest hunter would say they've arrived.
Yeah.
But I think it's pretty evident that a lot of times people have very developed systems that work for them. And right now, I'd say we're in the beginning stages of developing a system that's going to work for us.
Yeah.
Both on the technical side of the archery and on the side of tactics.
Yeah.
And whether it's, well, we can get into that later again, but I gotta keep holding back, and we'll start an episode two right now.
So much to talk about.
I just think is remembering that if you're new and if you don't have a ton of experience, but you've been out there and you've thought about it and you've watched something and you've made some kind of connection in your mind, and you're like, oh, hey, I wonder if they thought about that. That's something I want to hear. I don't want people to be timid about like, oh, well, they're up here. And we're not. And just make that really clear. We're not anywhere close to arriving at anything. And
we're still trying to figure out how to get going most days.
And I think this is something that's unique for us, is that we're both in a place where we're both relatively new in archery, and just in the grand scheme of things. And we're both brand new at the podcast idea.
Oh yeah.
And
like
we're just trying
week one into this whole thing.
Yes. And the thing is that like vulnerability, like that is what's going to make this is going to work or not based on that. And if we come in with the mentality of like, hey, we got this, it's just not going to work. Yeah. Because we don't know if we're honest with ourselves.
So anybody that has any good feedbacks, especially on the podcast side,
absolutely,
please let us know
anything
what we can do better. Unless it's short of changing our voices, because sorry, you're just going to have to deal with these voices. It's what we're given by God. So
that's
for the world to suffer on that end. And now we're putting it to a mic.
Yep. And honestly, like we have some general ideas again of like what we'll do for episode 2 and probably episode 3.
Yep.
But any questions, anything that's going to anything that's been thought provoking for you, or you're like, I want to hear a little bit more about this, or just a totally new idea that has been spurred on, we want to hear about that. And where can they reach us, Dustin?
You can reach out to us on either our Instagram page or our Facebook page at Venator Chronicles Podcast. And really, to kind of, I think, maybe wrap this up here.
Yeah, I think it's a good time.
Kind of coming back to that name, Venator Chronicles. We kind of started talking about it at the beginning, and then we went off. I think when we were trying to figure out a name, ultimately, kind of wanted to have a name that captured what we're about.
Yep.
Obviously, Venator being Latin for hunter, it's about hunting. And really the Chronicles part is just really chronicling our journey into this world of hunting, the lessons that we have learned, that we are learning, and that we will learn. And I think you really hit upon the community aspect of having a community of people wanting to learn, and to help each other learn. And in the same way, I think you and I have helped each other take what our strengths and our weaknesses and help balance each other out. So if you want to reach out to us with any critiques, again, you can either reach us on Instagram or Facebook at this point at Venator Chronicles Podcast.
Yep. Thanks for joining us. Anyone who's hung around this long, it's been fun, and we hope to hear from you. So thanks for coming.
Thank you.